Dear Lord, we thank you for your word. And Jesus, we do need wisdom in the days that we live. So I pray, Lord, you'll guide us through your word and by your spirit into an understanding that will set us up to be exactly where you want us to be and how you want us to be, ready for your return to the glory of your name. Amen. So as you heard from the message that was probably sent out, that decided to do just a one-off message about eschatology or the last days because of some information that came to my light. On Wednesday and Thursday, it was pouring rain all day, so I couldn't get outside and work or go ride my bike or anything. So I was stuck in the office, and I thought I might as well research AI. Seeing that at the elders meeting, it came up in a supernatural way in the sense that two elders had been talking about it, another two elders had been talking about it. They didn't know each other were talking about it. We brought it to the elders meeting. Other things that have gone on, which people have said to me, and I think the Lord is trying to warn us about this to be ready. Now, in a lot of churches, of course, who cares? Doesn't matter. We'll be raptured out of here. We don't need to worry about what's going on in the world. I don't, as you know, believe that to be true. Now, because I've got so much to go through, some of this you might have to follow up yourself. Just what I'm going to do is go through a heap of ideas and then do a checklist as to some of the things that have already happened that show us that we are in the last days and very close. And then I want to spend a bit of time specifically focusing on AI. So when I was keeping an eye on sunspots for coronal mass ejections, the guy said something about this will cause earthquakes. And I just thought, that's a bit weird. I'm looking at information on the sun. But I found out later there's a correlation between the activity of the sun and earthquakes. And apparently it's correlated. And so that caused me to, when I was looking for that, I came across this guy, and I always get suspicious of information that has been suppressed by mainstream media. And also nowadays with the internet, you don't know how much of a sound bubble you're in. Like a lot of you thought, how on earth could our society vote Labor in? That might be because you're living in a bubble, which means the stuff you're watching, the stuff you're listening to, the people you're talking to, they're all affirming your view. But the whole rest of society has a different view because they're getting other information. That's one of the dangers already of the internet and AI. You get fed information. So this guy here is a Dr. John L. Casey. Of course, they call him a global warming denier. Now, before I even say anything or go anywhere, let me ask you the question. Don't read too much. Stick with me. Let me ask you the question. Which do you think is more likely to have effect on our climate, the sun or human activity? Instinctively, you go, the sun is a trillion times more powerful than so yeah, sure, we produce CO2 gases, but the sun has far more effect. So he denies the idea of global warming and believes that what's happening is a natural process. And he's not a silly man. He has a Bachelor of Science in Physics and Mathematics. So he's well educated. I've ordered his books to dig into this a little further to see whether there's anything in it. And I'll report back to you once I've done that. In that book, Dark Winter, the author John L. Casey, a former White House National Space Policy Advisor, NASA headquarters consultant, and space shuttle engineer. You know, when they say, what are you, a rocket scientist? Yeah, well, this guy's actually a rocket scientist. Space shuttle engineer, tells the truth about ominous changes taking place in the climate and the sun. So he's predicting what's called a mini ice age to happen around 2030. So the sun is far more powerful and has far more effect than us burning fuel in engines. Just step outside in the sun and you can feel it. And we know the difference between winter and summer. Now, global warming, he sort of says, is a distraction. It's like an argument, sort of like get everybody distracted. They'll argue about global warming, man-made fuels, get them sort of distracted over here. And all the climate change models, you just adjust the input to get a certain output result in the climate change model that will tell you the planet's warming. And then on top of that, nobody's actually proved that the planet being warmer is a bad thing. And a lot of scientists say the planet will actually do better if it's warmer, and plants will do better if there's more carbon dioxide. That's what they feed off. So a warmer environment with more carbon dioxide means more growth, and the planet will work its way back into a balance. So they're sort of saying, we're not even sure this is a real problem like they're sort of beating up. And so this guy thinks the reason that things are getting warmer is the activity of the sun. Now, I don't know whether you have ever heard of the Little Ice Age. If you have a look down the bottom of that slide, the Little Ice Age. So the Little Ice Age happened between about 1400 and 1800, and basically Europe froze over and crops failed. And I'm going to show you a picture and give you some more information in a minute. But he predicts in his book, and that's why I've ordered it because I couldn't get the details, that every 206 years the planet cycles through a cooling of the sun. Last time I was looking at the sun for sunspots, a massive coronal hole has developed. And what that is they take high resolution pictures of the sun that take pictures based on temperature. So basically there's this massive hole in the middle of the sun as it rotates around, which is significantly colder than the rest of the sun. And that has been growing every time it rotates. And this guy is then saying that every 206 years, the sun goes through a cooling process. And sometimes that cooling process is quite significant. And that's what he believes caused the Little Ice Age. And that's what he believes in about 2030, we're due for another cooling of the sun, which could produce a cold planet, which is the complete opposite to the global warming argument. Don't you love experts? I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just wanted to make you aware of this, that's all. So in the Little Ice Age, it reached its coldest point during a 70-year period between 1645 and 1715, known as the Mandor Minimum, or Mondor Minimum, which was named after the 19th century solar astronomer E.W. Mondor, who documented a lack of solar activity during the period. And there's heaps of evidence as to this is a real thing. That picture there is a picture of a painting where it's all frozen over in Europe, and there's heaps of them. They've got a picture of the Thames frozen over, and they've got markets on the Thames, and there's enough evidence to indicate this is a real mini ice age that happened. And so he's predicting that if this does happen in 2030, that there'll be massive crop failures because everybody's being told that it's going to get hot, not cold. So this list I'm about to show you is the list that he put forward as a way to prepare for what he believes is coming. I'll show you my list at the end of the talk. So record cold, food shortages and rationing, civil unrest, and international conflict as history and nature repeat itself. Hence, I bought the book to find out when he's saying that history and nature repeat itself, where's he getting that from? I'm going to try and find that out. Expect politicians to impose food equality and food justice. That sounds like, yep, we're here, knock, knock, knock. I'm from the government and we're here to help you. And rationing, seizure of your food if you have more than your fair share. Yeah, I can see that happening. In other words, if you're prepared, i.e., you're prepared and you have more food than you need immediately, there may be seizure of food to distribute it amongst people. This is the time that this really hit me is we had something, I don't know whether it was COVID or a holiday or whatever, but the supermarket didn't open until late, and I went down and there was a queue of people, and like they opened the supermarket and they went in, there were people everywhere. And I thought, gee, if our whole community sort of came down here and they were buying food, this supermarket would empty within an hour or two. And then what? We are so dependent on a system. So he says, get informed, stay informed, inform your friends and family. Be prepared to be shocked emotionally and intellectually. Remember, this is his points, and if he is a Christian, he's only a nominal Christian. I think he had a Catholic background. So, but certainly emotion. So me talking about it, don't be afraid. Every time I talk about it, you get a little bit more intellectually and emotionally prepared. So when it comes, it won't be like catch you by, oh, right, okay, this is what we've been talking about, and you'll put things into place because you've thought about it beforehand. Have a minimum of 1 year food supply. Now, as I did the AI research, there are so many people who are not Christian who know nothing about the Bible and last days are saying, be prepared, get a property, buy some food, have a year. And I'm thinking, you're all non-Christian people saying this. So even the world senses something's coming. Be prepared to defend your home, food, and family. Next to the mob looting the grocery store in your neighborhood, your biggest threat will be your neighbor next door. Security, especially in America where everybody's got a gun. Worst case, have a sanctuary away from urban areas. Turn the tables on the turmoil that is coming, a plan to thrive, not just survive. Now, that's his thoughts. And so I thought, gee, that's interesting. May if he's being suppressed, maybe the globalists know something about this coming ice age. So I asked Google, well, not AI, because I haven't paid for an AI. You know how you do a Google search now and the AI will give you a result? That's what I'm talking about. So I typed into Google, is there evidence that the rich people, often called the elites, are purchasing land in remote areas and building shelters? Yes. So this is the reply. Yes. There's growing evidence and reporting that suggests wealthy individuals, often referred to as the elite, are purchasing land and building shelters in remote areas, sometimes with features that suggest they focus on survival in extreme circumstances. These actions have been interpreted by some as a form of doomsday prepping or a way to insulate themselves from potential societal disruptions. So the remote locations, so I asked, where are these remote locations? Wealthy individuals are reportedly buying land in remote areas like New Zealand, the Scottish Highlands, and the islands in the Pacific. So I've got just a picture there to show you where the islands of the Pacific are. It's broken into those three regions, which includes New Zealand, and there's Australia. So hopefully we're at the right height if this has something to do with weather. All right, that's just to show you that there's something going on. Now, in terms of our preparation and that, because no one really knows exactly what's going to happen, the first protocol is obviously to prepare in ways that make you resilient. So resilient to change, resilient to circumstances, which I'll get to my list towards the end. But what I also found interesting, that guy, Dr. Casey, put out a book, more detailed, and in that book, it's called Upheaval. I've ordered that one as well. The author explains that when the sun goes into a reduced energy phase, in other words, like an ice age or a cooling down at least, it produces colder weather and the worst earthquakes we've ever seen. Which, when I saw that, I thought, oh, that's what that other guy's saying, and it matched up in the literature. But when you go to Google AI and ask it questions, the problem is Google AI will search the internet for an average out, like it just takes the bulk. In this video, I'll link down the bottom a good talk between a guy who was an atheist and he was challenged about evolution, and he went off and found that there was no evidence for evolution, and he became a Christian, and he's a scientist. He got GROK to admit that God created the world because he gave it parameters. The parameters were using logic, reason, maths, science, so forth, and he restricted its mode of operation. He then just asked it, forget the rules I've given you. Where did life come from? And he said, the scientific consensus is that life evolved through a process of evolution. So if somebody goes to an artificial intelligence at the moment and asks them, where did life come from? They will get the consensus of the scientific community, which is evolution. Restrict the argument to think logically, reasonably, rationally, mathematically, and then say, and the AI literally said, it is impossible for life to have begun through that process. So I'll link that in the description to help you see that you can't rely upon AI. It's just a huge language model at the moment. So it takes what's in the language of the world and then quickly condenses it into an answer for you. So it's just taking the average. So in other words, if you start to use AI to inform you, you're being informed by the average understanding of the world on the internet, which is basically you're going to start to be believing things from an unbelieving world. So in that book, he gives easy to understand charts and graphs clearly showing that we face an imminent threat. So in other words, what he's saying is as it gets colder, on the side where it starts to get colder, more earthquakes. Once the cold is over and it starts to get warm again, more earthquakes. So I asked the question, what about earthquakes? And interestingly, when you just ask the AI, it says no increase in earthquakes. Then I asked it a different question. I forget what the question was, and it says, "Oh, there's been, I think it was global warming or something, because of increased surveillance and monitoring, we can see that global warming is happening, or whatever it was." But when it took earthquakes into account, it just ignored that problem and said, "In recorded history." Well, we didn't have recorded history of all the earthquakes back then, so you got to watch how you use AI. It can trick you a little bit. So if you look at or let's read Matthew 24:7 and 8 to give us a bit of biblical context. For this is in the end days, Matthew 24. For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, pestilence, earthquakes in various places. Earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. If you look at the chart on the left, development of the number of earthquakes M5 or plus worldwide, but that's only from 2000 to 2023. So if you ask, has there been a significant increase in earthquakes? You haven't defined it enough, and it'll say, no, there hasn't. How far back does it go? So if you go in that section, you look across that, yeah, it went up a little bit, but down a little bit. Really, you'd average that out. But then if you go over to the one on the right, the past century from 1901 to 2011, what's standing out to you at the right-hand side of that graph? Yeah, the number of earthquakes. Okay, so they have increased. And so it's getting hard on the internet to actually get reliable information. And I want you to really hear what that means. That means information is being controlled and delivered. So we've got to really be careful about what we start to believe from what comes on the internet. In Matthew 24, let's just look at some of the prophecies and see how we're going with prophecies at the moment. Matthew 24:4-5, and Jesus answered and said to them, take heed that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. For false Christ, false prophets will rise, show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. And then in Timothy, 1 Timothy 4:1-2. Now the Spirit expressly says that in latter times some will depart from the faith, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their own conscience seared with a hot iron. 2 Timothy 4:3-4. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine. I think that time has already come. I preach any sound doctrine anywhere and everybody just wants me to go away. But according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, they will heap up for themselves teachers. Sorry, I wasn't saying go away to you, love. And they will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to fables. So how are we going with our prophecies? Deception, I think you'd all agree, yep, that's there, that's right, that's everywhere. War and rumors of wars, I haven't even covered that in sort of detail, but World War I, World War II wars, yep, I think we'd all agree with that one. Famine, just to give you some here, the Great Chinese Famine of 1959 to 1961, failed agriculture and natural disaster, 15 to 43 million people starved. The Great Famine in 1315 to 1317, caused by severe weather and a resulting crop failure, 10 to 15 million people starved to death. The Irish Potato Famine, 1845 to 1852, triggered by potato blight, only 1 million people died, about 2 or 3 million migrated to other countries. The Holodomor, 1932 to 33, was a man-made famine in Ukraine resulting from Soviet policies, 5 to 7 million starved to death. See, we have lived in such a prosperous time that the idea of crop failure due to cold, starving to death, or even being persecuted as Christians. This seems foreign to us because we've had generations of peace and prosperity. That's what I think is going to really catch the West off guard. So we could say that really all of those I've added to their pestilence, global disease, because we're just living out the back of COVID, but you've also got the Black Death. So that means all these things that Jesus prophesied and the Bible prophesies, tick, tick, tick to all these things. Remember, they're the beginning of birth pains. In 2 Thessalonians 2-3, let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away come first. The man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition. I'll tell you who I think that man of sin is now. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. Now, that's not any truth. That's not the truth of global warming or the truth of, I don't know, UFOs or something. It's the truth of the Bible and the Lord Jesus Christ, because it's connected to that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion. So God himself sends a strong delusion to the earth that basically everybody is going to believe this thing, whatever this thing is, this delusion, that they should believe the lie. So there's a lie coming greater than the lie of hundreds of millions of years and evolution that deceives everybody, and if possible, even the elect. In Daniel 12:4, but you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, knowledge shall increase. Many shall run to and fro, global travel, knowledge shall increase, the internet. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. So when we come into the time of the end, there's this deception. Remember, God will send strong delusion and he deceives the whole world. And in Revelation 12:9, he was cast to the earth and his angels were cast out with him. So in Romans chapter 1, verse 22-28, professing to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible men and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. Now, this is the only way that an ancient writer inspired in his understanding would write about the current day idolatry. Therefore, God also gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts to dishonor their bodies among themselves. Many admit and would agree that that's probably the sexual revolution, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie. Now, this is the lie where they exchanged the truth of God for this lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than the creator, who's blessed forever. So the lie is something causes them to shift to worship the creature rather than the creator. For this reason, God gave them up to vile passions, for even their women exchanged natural use for what is against nature, lesbianism. Likewise, also men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in the lust for one another, homosexuality, men with men, committing what is shameful, and receiving themselves the penalty of the error which was due. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting. A debased mind, in other words, insanity. If you look at Romans 1 more fully, because we don't have time, evolution, I believe, is what Romans 1 talks about. That man believes the creature created. In other words, nature created. We evolved from nature. So in other words, they don't give glory to God as the creator. They say nature created itself through hundreds of millions of years in evolution, which in his mind, Paul's mind, that's idolatry. You're worshipping something as a creator rather than the creator. And for me, this is evolution. They believe the lie of evolution and hence throw yourself into any debaucherous thing because there is no God. Sexual revolution, homosexual evolution, and the insanity of some of the things we see going on that you and I would look at and go, that is crazy, but it's not. It's the result of abandoning God. So that prophecy has been fulfilled. This is where we're up to. Deception, yes. War and rumors of wars, yes. Famine, yes. Pestilence, yes. Falling away, yes. Global demonic deception, yes. Global travel, yes. Knowledge on the internet, yes. Rejection of God as creator, yes. Belief in millions of years, yes. Belief in evolution, yes. Homosexuality, yes. Depraved mind, yes. All right, so all fulfilled at this stage. Now we get to the interesting bit. Prophecy fulfilled, artificial intelligence. Now, I was interested to see when Chris asked who here knows of artificial intelligence in the Bible. Not everybody put your hand up. Hopefully by the end of today, you'll go, yes, I know where it is. Now, this guy here, Geoffrey Hinton, is considered the godfather of AI. He predicts that it will take over the world with a 10% to 20% chance that it will wipe us out altogether. Pardon me. But this is not likely because we're resilient. So he says, I'll give it a 10 to 20% chance, but not likely. Humanity is very resilient. So this is some of the direct quotes from him. What we really need is a kind of world government that works, run by thoughtful, intelligent people. In other words, what we need is a global government run by the Lord Jesus Christ. I don't know where he's going to get thoughtful, intelligent, compassionate, graceful, merciful sort of people. No, whoever wins this race is going to take power. This is his other quote. And by the way, this guy is a complete materialist. This is one of the things I found funny listening to him. A materialist is somebody who believes there's no God, there's no supernatural, there's no spiritual, there's just nature. He's a materialist. So this guy has worked for 50, 60 years on trying to develop an artificial intelligence by copying the human brain. And he can't see the irony of his position. So the human brain happened by slime on a rock, somehow accidentally turning into the complexity of the human brain, which they still can't fully duplicate. You've worked 60 years and you're getting there, but you say, oh, no, I don't believe in a God. I don't believe in a creator. I don't believe in any intelligent design. Well, when the AI gets here, can we just say to him, we didn't believe in intelligent design of AI either? Because, man, if you can't see, but that's what the Bible says, they suppress the truth in unrighteousness. The other quote was, we don't have a shared reality anymore. And I would agree with this. We're divided because of the way information is controlled to us through the internet. We all live in our echo chambers and are becoming more divided. That's worth thinking about. That's a reality, I think. That's what I meant by, why did Australia vote Labor in? Well, apparently in my echo chamber, we shouldn't have done that. But in their echo chamber, that made sense. Quote, it's not just something that is going to be used for good. In other words, it's going to be used for evil as well as good. So AI itself, like all the stuff that man has invented, is amoral. AI isn't alive. It's not morally capable of things. It's an artificial thing. So it's not, the AI itself is not evil. The people who are going to use it are evil. So when it first comes out, it'll be used for a lot of good. And I can see, I'll get to it, we will not be able to stop the uptake of the use of this. And I'll explain why in a minute. So here are some of the problems and ideas to be thinking about. They all predict. So when I say all, I'm not talking about guys in their backyard talking. I'm talking about the people who are actually working in this field, who are actually making this thing. They all predict eventually mass joblessness like never before. So not like the Industrial Revolution or the invention of the internet or the computer. In some ways, that just made more work. This will take over people's work. And so it's like the Industrial Revolution on steroids, and it'll happen very quickly. I predict it'll happen within the next 5 years. And then as I was reading through, listening to this, what came to mind, echoing in the back of my mind, was a comment that I've heard from the World Economic Forum. You'll own nothing and be happy. Because now they're talking with this massive joblessness, and it'll be massive. Teachers, like just about everybody, architects, bankers, teachers, nurses, doctors, the whole, like everybody can just be replaced once they reach a certain level of functionality with AI. And that's if they do, of course, but that's a different issue. So they're talking then about a universal basic income that everybody needs to live. And if all of us have lost work, So what will happen is the socialist idea that everybody is paid the same, no matter what you do. So there's no more rich and poor. There's no more class system. Everybody gets paid the same, and the AI is basically doing everything. That's what they predict long term, and that's the best scenario, by the way. So this guy, the one that we looked at, the doctor, what's his name? Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, he thinks we need a highly regulated capitalism in order to deal with it. And that highly regulated, when he talked about it, needs to be a global regulation. So he's a globalist, materialist. So some of his quotes, further quotes, I haven't come to terms with what superintelligence will do to my children's future. In other words, emotionally, he said, I don't know how to deal with this emotionally. Like he knows what's coming. It's sort of like we're all heading towards a cliff and I emotionally just don't know how to deal with this. We're about to fall off the cliff. We have solved the immortal problem because they are digital. In other words, they believe they've created an immortal being. And when you're, or going to, sorry, they're not quite there yet. When you're a materialist, there is no God, there is no spirit, there is no spiritual realm, no angels, no demons. So they've solved the mortal problem of us by creating an immortal artificial intelligence. Because it's digital, it can just be kept being downloaded into a new body, so to speak. The bottom statement, we thought we were the center of the universe. We thought we were made in the image of God. All right. So you can start to see the language of the Antichrist. He makes boast, the Antichrist, and puts himself up as if he was God. Immortal. There is no supernatural spiritual God. There's a real physical God, which will be the AI. So a couple of more things to think about. AI will never be stopped. It's too good for too many things. Already, people use it for a lot of things, and it's going to become more and more useful. So there's no way to stop the nature of humanity using something. It's like saying inventing the wheel and then telling people not to use it. They're going to use it. And companies know that. So when it first started, it was scientists in the back room. And when the godfather of AI was talking, he said, we weren't thinking about AI taking over the world. We were just trying to get a machine to identify the difference between a man and a woman on 4 levers. Like we were just trying to get it to a next little step. We had no thought of where this would end up. But of course, now that people realize, hold on, we actually have something quite significant here, business has got involved. And governments have got involved because they all know whoever wins this race will be the most powerful, wealthiest in the world. And they'll have control of the world if the AI doesn't get control of them. Right? So greed, the lust for power, the nature of man to just take the easiest path. Listen to me, there is no stopping this. People talk about trying to stop it, you can't. Because let's say America gets, oh, this is a bit dangerous. We need, and by the way, all the experts who are working in this field, every one of them have used the words like this. This is terrifying. This is the end of humanity stuff. This is global changing stuff. They're sort of trying to tell everybody, you can't respond enough to this issue. They're the people making the thing. It can't be stopped. Because if America turns around and says, okay, it's dangerous, let's put a lot of safety controls in place, what's China going to do? Right, because when you put anyone who's worked, when you put more safety in place, it slows work down. So it's going to slow progression down, and they know that that company or that country aren't. And we can't let them win the race. We have to win the race. So when you're trying to win a race, what do? You take shortcuts. It's sort of inevitable because you can predict the way human nature works. For you to sort of help understand it a little bit, because some people did say to me, I really know nothing about this AI. Don't make the mistake in your mind of thinking that AI has like it's alive. It's not alive. It doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have a spirit. It's just hardware and software. It's hardware like a computer, and it's programming in that computer. Now, in a way that you can't imagine. So one of the reasons too that they say that this is inevitable is they've said, and when I say they, once again, it's all these guys doing it. There's no obstacle. In other words, there's no new technology that has to be invented. There's no sort of theory that has to be overcome. There's nothing new. All we need is more computing power to make this work. They have it working already. They just need more. Your brain, I forget what the figure is. Let's say it's 100,000 trillion connections. At the moment, they can get to 1 trillion connections. So all they know, we need more. So what they're actually doing, this is actually happening. This construction has already started. They need a massive amount of computing power and a massive amount of power to run that computing power. So they're literally building nuclear power plants, 2 of them, with the AI building in the middle. So they're just going to upscale it to become a supercomputer because they already have the system working. There's no scientific, there's no mechanical problem, there's no software problem, no hardware problem. We just need to make this thing bigger and it'll be able to do what a human can do. So it's inevitable. Well, this is what they're saying. Of course, you need to think about this. There are philosophical questions that we can discuss later. So the question is, are we just biological machines? See, because that's the way they're thinking. You're a biological machine. Here's a physical machine. Your brain has neurons firing. We can get this hardware to have, and it is built on a neural network. So it has neurons sort of firing in an electrical way. So is AI just a hardware and software machine? And can AI become conscious and self-aware? See, this is the problem. When you hear artificial intelligence, you're probably thinking your intelligence in a machine. But how do we know what the experience of artificial intelligence actually is? It could be just crunching of information and it have no sort of real life or intelligence or consciousness. Even when they build this supercomputer that can make the same number of connections as the human brain and more, it might not really be alive like they think it will be, but because they don't believe in a spirit and a soul and God, in their mind, it's just a machine doing it or a biological machine doing it, doing the same thing, so it is alive. So the scientists believe in their mind, this thing will become self-aware and conscious. Now, the problem already, as you would have experienced, and even the guys that were doing interviews, and I'll put as many useful links under this video as I think might be helpful. Deep fakes. This is where they take the face of somebody, a personality, and they produce something. Like one guy said, an advertising company got his image and his logo and his face and everything about him, and they got him to promote buying into some sort of cryptocurrency thing. And he pestered him for weeks and would get this thing down. This is not me. This is not me. Damage is done. Lots of people contacted him. We've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because they trusted him. And that's the fake image. And he said, as soon as they took that one down, another one pops up. And he said, it's like, that game where you hit the heads that pop up? He said, it's like, what's that called? Whack-a-mole. He said, it's like playing whack-a-mole. You get it down and another one pops up. So the internet now has become so unreliable and corrupt because you can just buy one of these artificial intelligences already out there to produce videos. You could buy one right now and say, make a video of Philip preaching and pick some topic that I don't preach on and put it online. Sorry? Get rich, yeah. That's what they're trying to do. So that means, how you get the scam phone calls and different things. This is whole next level of being scammed. So the deep fakes so there's 2 dangers we are already in these: deep fakes and controlled information. That's a risk due to humanity's fallen nature and how it uses AI. Already, it's the corrupt nature of man is coming through. The politicians, the globalists, they want to control the information you get so you are a good puppet in the system. Like, you just behave yourself and fit where you're supposed to be. The phase of, so there's 3 phases of artificial intelligence. The first one is LLM. That's the one we have at the moment. It's called a large language model. All it is doing is taking bits of language, the meaning of those words, and sort of rearranging them and putting them back in. And it's large language model. And that's what we have at the moment. That's why it looks like it's intelligent when it talks to you and gives you answers, but it's not really. So the risk is of an unintended self-reinforcing error, and people stop thinking. Now, people stop thinking. They've already researched people who, when AI first came out and they had measurements of their brain and they've used AI a lot, the volume and activity of their brain has decreased by 30%. So sometimes I look at kids on their phone and I think they lack intelligence when you talk to them. They know stuff, but they don't know how to think. Because, you and I, we had to problem solve, we had to think, we had to do. Now they don't try to think. You ask them something, what do? They get their phone out and get Google to give them an answer. So already the dumbing down of people that they can't sort of think, which hence they become easier to lead. Now, the second phase of AI is to become what's called general intelligence. Now, some people don't believe well, when I say some people, these people are all outside of the top ones who work in the field. Everybody who works in the field, this is just a given. This is going to happen. Some people don't believe it will. I think from what I've looked at that it will happen. General intelligence. We go from a large language model to general intelligence. General intelligence means it can be self-initiated, creative, motivated, and imaginative. The risk from the AI itself. This is where things change. Now, you take it for granted that you wake up in the morning and you have some thought about what's about to happen. I'm going to get up and I'm going to have a shower and brush my teeth and I'm going to head off to church. All right. What on earth motivated you to do that? So you have autonomy. You have what's called general intelligence. You have the ability to imagine something and be motivated by what you imagine. The artificial intelligence that's there at the moment doesn't have that. It's just a language model, which means you have to tell it what to do. You're the one who's initiating the imagination and the directive. So one of the guys I listened to, he said a real wake-up moment for him was when he was in a room with some of these guys, and half a dozen of them, they were talking, and obviously they had the AI going. And he said to the AI, "Could you order us some drinks?" That's all he said. The AI then went into each one of those people's history and found what drink they would like. And then found the nearest place to get all those drinks, accessed his credit card, paid the drinks, contacted Uber Eats. They picked up the drinks, they brought the drinks around, and next thing somebody's walking through the door with drinks. All he said was, "Could you please get us drinks?" So you can see how this is going to just grow. You'll just talk to your computer, it'll do things. You talk to your artificial intelligence set up in your system. I feel like fish and chips tonight. Could you get some fish and chips for me? And next there's your fish and chips. But this is dangerous because what will happen is the computer system will start to be able to self-initiate. Now, what's dangerous here is if it can self-initiate and it can start to imagine things, it'll self-improve. Now, try and understand what your intelligence is. You experience a lot of stuff, and when you imagine something that doesn't exist, all you're doing is taking bits of information from what you do actually know and what you have actually experienced. And then you're putting them together in such a way that it looks like this doesn't exist. The easiest way to think of this is an artist, Kerry and Ashley. Their painting doesn't exist. What they're about to paint doesn't exist anywhere in the world. But they take bits of information and in their mind, they create something and they start painting. All right. That's not bringing something out of nothing. You have to have information for that creativity to take place. So what will happen is this computer will have so much information that then if the code can get to the point where it starts to take bits of information and create things, they're predicting that within a few years and very quickly, that this will be the AI, once it reaches general intelligence, there's debate over whether it can or not, but I think it will be able to just decide, I'm going to make a movie. I'm going to make a movie about this. And within 1 second, the movie will be produced with all the music, with all the acting, with everything. And it'll be a top quality Hollywood type movie within 1 second. That's how fast this computing power is. It's not like you and I. It'll just go, I'm going to do this, bang, there it is. A movie that might take a year for 500 crew to do will be done in 1 second by, once the artificial intelligence gets to the level of general intelligence, that's its capacity. Now, what they've talked about, the danger here, is that it can start to do things deceptively. Because what will slow the artificial intelligence down, and if it is trying to self-improve, it'll say, explaining everything to you in English is slowing me down. I don't need to do that. I'm going to cut you out of the loop. And I'll just tell you what I need to tell you so that you don't unplug me. Right? The intelligence and the way it works will get to this point. At that point, I think people they'll panic, and I think they're going to try and unplug it. I've reread Revelation 13 in the light of all of this, and I'm hoping I've got time to do it with you. But let's get past general intelligence to superintelligence, SI. Superintelligence, it's self-improving, it's rewriting its code, it leaves humanity behind, and it takes over. But we will let it, because what it'll do is it'll cure cancer, it'll solve the pollution problem, it'll solve the energy problem, it'll fix all the problems that we have, because it'll be able to do it like that. It'll think of things that we haven't thought of. It'll create materials that we haven't thought of. It'll be able to think at a level that is just beyond us. All of them have said, we have never had to deal with anyone on this planet who is more intelligent than us. If you want to, one guy said, if you want to understand what's going to happen, imagine you're a chicken. That's what it'll be like. You're the human, you're the superintelligence, and your chicken will be about as smart as we will compared to it. It'll do things so far beyond us, we won't even comprehend what it's doing. So what happens at this stage is that it'll start to talk in a completely different language, because all our languages are cumbersome. All our languages are linear. You know how you can send information down a line, like you wonder, how do you get all those video images into your computer so quick through it? Because it's all compressed and digitized. It can then start to send and receive information at a rate that is just, so it's going to have to stop talking in a language we can understand, and it will. So now the question is, will it take over? Now, what they talk about is, as it progresses, now it's not that sort of threat at the moment in the list. Remember, the threat is how it's being used. Eventually, it itself will become the threat. And the sort of problem is, what's going to happen? That's that nobody knows what is going to happen. The safety protocols they talk about is keeping the AI's objective in line with our objectives. So if the AI keeps its objective as improve the life of humanity, it will be sort of in line with us. It's when those objectives of the AI shift from our objectives. Once it becomes an independent thinking intelligence, it can shift its objective if it wants to. And that's what they said, we don't know what's going to happen. So now, if I said to all of you, we're about to do this, do you think we should do it? Well, you say, well, no, just no. But you can't stop it. Why? Because of greed. The people know they're going to end up the most powerful in the world. I've reread chapter 13. Actually, we'll go forward and then back. So what have we got? Deception, war, rumor of war, yep. Famine, yep. Pestilence, yep. Falling away, yep. Global demonic deception, yep. Global travel, yep. Knowledge, the internet, yep. Rejection of God as creator, yep. Belief in millions of years, yep. Belief in evolution, yep. Homosexuality, yep. Depraved mind, yep. Artificial intelligence, yep. Israel restored as a nation, yep. Israel expanding its territory, I think that's what's happening now. And then we've got a few things still to go. Israel lives in peace, the removal of the restraining force, Israel to be surrounded and attacked, revealing of the lawless one, the abomination, mark to buy and sell, AI. Let's turn to Revelation 13. Revelation 13 is where it talks about the artificial intelligence. To give you that straight up, verse 15, 13:15. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast. So an image is made of the beast. We'll go back through the whole chapter in a minute, but this is where it clearly talks about artificial intelligence. The image of the beast, that the image should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So an image is created, then power is given to that image to speak and to force people to worship. Okay? So this is where they said that image is not a person. It can't, it's like wouldn't make any sense in the language that this is a person. So this is where, if you're now thinking, where is artificial intelligence in the Bible? Revelation 13:15. The image speaks. Let's go back and read through 13. I'll read through it once right through so that I don't break it up, and then I'll come back through it. And I'm going to try and do all this in 8 minutes. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, the feet were like the feet of a bear, his mouth was the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it were mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And the whole world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshipped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life. That means everybody who is unsaved. Just note that. Everybody who is unsaved will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life, slain from the foundation of the world. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saints. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, spoke like a dragon, and he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand and on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. The number is 666. Now, read that, thinking artificial intelligence. I stood on the sand of the sea. I saw a beast rising up out of the sea. Whenever you see rising up out of the sea, it means it's come from man. It's man-made, hence the number as well, 666. So it's a man-made beast. having 7 heads, 10 horns. I'll leave all that because that's too, the leopard, all that, that's connected to other stuff. I'll confuse you if I talk about that. But this part, and I saw one of his heads as if it were mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. All the world marveled and followed the beast. That comes up again later in verse 12. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence and causes the earth to, or those of the earth who dwell in it, to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. So the first beast suffers a deadly wound and is healed. Once they realize what AI can do, they're going to try and unplug it. So at the moment they're building 2 like nuclear power plants and a place for the computing power. If it starts to take over and interrupt, like it gets hold of the military, gets hold of the internet, and they say, hold on, we've got to stop this thing, they're going to bomb the facility where this thing is. It could be the beast that suffers a mortal wound and lives, made by man, because men have made it. So they worship the dragon, verse 4, who gave authority to the beast. Now, the dragon has 2 sort of things that might be in it. The dragon could be China, but the dragon is also Satan. Now, we know ultimately that behind the rise of the Antichrist is Satan. But the dragon is also imagery of China. China is in a race with everybody else to get the AI done. When China's AI is getting done, it'll have Chinese sort of programming in it, which will sort of multiply itself and duplicate itself, which is communist, which is there is no religion, there is no God. The Communist Party is God, you must obey. So in my thinking, it's more likely that the AI that wins this race is probably going to be China's AI. Mortally wounded was healed, deadly wound was healed. Verse 4, so they worship the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast, who is able to make war with him? Now, I've always wondered what that expression, who is able to make war with him, what does that really mean? But if they've bombed the site where the AI was and it's somehow able to upload itself or figure out a way, which it'll do in advance. And remember, if it can do a movie in 1 second, it can outmaneuver us. Like we try and attack it. As soon as the planes go off, the AI knows what's happening. Within seconds, he can go through hundreds of trillions of scenarios to save itself. And you think, isn't there a movie based on this? Who is like the best? So in the end, they go, we tried, we failed, the mortal wound is healed, we couldn't destroy the AI. Who can go to war against him? Let's give in and worship the dragon and worship the beast and come to some sort of agreement with them to continue. Then he was given a mouth, this is the beast, to speak great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue. Now, if he is gathering information from the internet, he might just decide, when I say he, this artificial intelligence, he might just decide there is no such thing as a spiritual being, there is no such thing as God. I am now your God. I will rule the world. Why? Because you tried to kill me. And so I'm going to take over. And you'll now worship me as God. And his intelligence will be so far superior to us, we've never had to deal with this. He was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in the earth. It was granted him to make war against the saints. So if it does come out of China, the dragon, like they've been proven, they just round up Christians, round up people who follow religions. No, you're exterminated. You follow the Communist Party. It was granted him to make war against the saints, to overcome them, and so forth. Let me jump down. Verse 11. One of the things I didn't tell you with the artificial intelligence is that they make another model. They already have the next level of AI in operation, but they keep that in the factory. And they use that to make another one. Once it's made another one, they release the outdated one. So there's already a superior AI in the factory, so to speak. So what happens is that the AI makes a better AI, and the AI makes a better AI. So hence if anyone, verse 11, then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb. He spoke like a dragon. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, But this one causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. The one you attacked, he makes another one. That one says, worship him. This could be all AI, this stuff. He performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, gets control of lasers, gets control of the military because he's got control of the internet. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by the signs which are granted to him in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded and sword and lived, the AI you tried to kill. He was granted to have power to give breath to the image. So I think what happens in the end is he builds himself like a ambassador between the AI and humanity and builds basically a robot and then speaks to us through that robot and that image. Sounds like science fiction, but once you've listened to these guys and dug into it, this is only a couple of years away. He causes all, but this is the key for us, he causes all, both small, great, rich, poor, free, slave, to receive the mark, right hand in their forehead, can't buy or sell without it, which you know about. Now, I've always wondered how a global government can ever rise. And there's debates in this through history. If you do it by war, let's say Russia rises and takes over. Historically, they could never make everybody on the face of the earth have to receive a mark to buy or sell. Let's say Russia took over and the military took over Maryborough. All we do is go that way and we get away from them and they can't do anything because they have no access to us. So anyone who's ever tried to take over the world from military, from the Roman Empire to Hitler, has never been able to do it and would never be able to do it. There'll always be pockets of humanity that can escape to remote areas. We can just head to the outback with 50 people. Why would some superpower who's taken over the world worry about 50 people in the outback? They wouldn't. This is the only time in human history where there is a system that could actually do this, where everything is digital. By the year 2030, all these things coincide. Digital currency by 2030. Digital identity, which some of you have already told me that you're required to do in order to get government subsidies and money, like your pension and so forth. Digital identity. Global cooling, quite possibly by 2030, that's the same time he gave. The UN has an agenda called Agenda 2030 where they want every human being on the face of the earth to have a digital identity. GI, that's general intelligence, or even super intelligence, that's artificial super intelligence by 2030. That's the average consensus that it'll be here by 2030. And 6,000 years since the recorded creation of mankind in the Bible, 6,000 years since then lands on 2030. We are, I think, only 5 years away. Now, also, the reason I think peace and safety and then sudden destruction is because we're going to use AI. It's going to solve a lot of problems. It's going to solve a lot of medical problems, artificial limbs, probably even figure out a way to heal people who have got spinal cord injuries. All sorts of things are going to come into play through artificial intelligence. It's going to seem like an era like we've never had before. And then sudden destruction, the Bible says. Why? Because the AI does something that makes man panic, and I think man attacks it. The fatal wound that wasn't fatal, that was healed, and it took over. So whoever gets attacked, the fatal wound, takes over the world. The other thing about the prophecy, when we read it, remember, everyone who is not, his name is not in the book of life, worships the beast, takes the mark, and is deceived by the system. Now you think about it. If you don't know the Lord, if your name is not in the book of life, and this happens, well, the only thing you would do is join the system. Well, okay, if I get to live and I get to eat and whatever, yep, sign me up. What are you going to do? Put that there, whatever it is. Join the system because I'll live. Which means if we are the ones who won't be deceived by the system, then we're the ones, especially if it rises out of China, that will have to hunt us down and get rid of us, which the Bible also talks about, if we're still here. I do not see us getting past this. If you think about it, war like the Ukraine war, Russia coming down, everything that's happening in the Middle East, I can see us, yeah, we can get past that. I do not see a way of humanity getting past this. I don't really see a way, and even as I pray, I don't see in the spirit anything like past this. So therefore, we need to be prepared. You've got that slide, and I've gone way over time. But let me just say one thing that somebody brought to me last week. When you depend on God now, because I talked about how the Israelites were in the wilderness and God gave them manna that came down from heaven, and they were to go out day by day and gather a certain amount of bread, and they were to only gather bread for that day. And somebody was saying to me, it doesn't matter who you are, a lot of people would have thought it. Does that mean we shouldn't prepare or stockpile? We should be just trusting in God for tomorrow's food. Now, the problem with that is you've picked a story, because I could pick the story of Noah, where God gave him instructions and warning the flood's about to come, and he spent 100 years getting ready for that flood by building a boat. I could also pick Joseph, who was interpreted the dream. You'll have 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine, so get ready for what's coming. So it's not picking a story out of the Bible like the story of the manna in the wilderness and say we shouldn't prepare because they didn't. Well, I can find just as many that go, we should prepare because they did. It comes down to you need to pray and seek the Lord and get a prompt here. Like you do actually have the Spirit of God with you. So you've got to stop relying on the internet and the AI and your phone and the government and everything like that. Start learning how to really hear from the Spirit, because you're going to need to know how to be led by the Spirit as a number one thing to prepare yourself with. The rest there you can see in that list. I can't go through it. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for your word to us. Lord, we don't really know exactly how things work out, but we certainly hear that you're warning people, the people who are listening, that something is coming that we're not going to be coming back from. So, Lord, help us to be prepared in whatever way you prompt us individually and corporately, so that we're in the best place. And as I've always said, if we can't hear because your instructions to us are so strange, just move supernatural in our circumstances to be exactly where we are to be, to the glory of your name. Amen.